Team of the future, potential. They're going to kill it when they get their opportunity. These are all things we say about teams, players that we are excited for. Their potential is unlimited, right? Right now, as the Canadian men are preparing, less than a year out from a World Cup, the women are preparing for their preparation to qualify for the next World Cup. And their team is in a very interesting spot. I think one of the more fascinating things with them is what do? They hold on for one more run with a generation that has shown they can be successful at the global stage? Or do they turn the page and try to employ a more youthful side, a side of players who are ready to show that they can play up to the level? It's the age-old question, but what would those teams look like? And that's what we're going to look at today. So when we talk about teams of the future, we want to categorize this in three different sections. And I'm going to go with like a U21 team, so a U23, and then a 25 slash some of the olders, and that's where it's the less than 5 caps. The reason why I want to go with the less than 5 caps ultimately is just primarily because there may be some players, whether they are young or maybe they're a little bit older, maybe you think they have something to offer here. Within the 5, I also want to include players who haven't been capped in 5 years, who I think could offer something very good to the national team program. So the first one I think is one of the more easier ones to make, and that's a U21 side. So as of recording in the year 2025, they have to be 21 years or younger. That is what we are going for. And so, a graphic here, but here is the lineup. And I went with more of a 4-2-3-1. And so here is the lineup. Noel Henning in goal. We're going to go left back, Jadea Collin, Jeanette Okiki, Ibo Ching, and then as our right back, we have Ella Ati, who is only 20. That is wild to me. Ella Ati is, that makes sense. That does make sense. So that's the back line. Now, interestingly enough, Ella Ati just received a call-up recently this year for the women's national team, in a position where the center back, like the fullbacks are interesting because it's a question of availability. If you look at the program overall, right? A player like Sydney Collin, who got called up in the last set with Beth Priestman, right? She certainly showed that talent. But then you look at her, then you also look at a player like Jade Revere. No one's going to question their talent, but their lack of availability has opened the door for Gabby Carl to place her chair on that position, say, this is actually my position now. No one is questioning the talent. No one is questioning the ability of those two players, but their lack of availability has meant the opportunity is there for Gabby Carl. So a player like Ella Ati, I think, would really show well in terms of the potential. The other fullback, I think, interestingly enough, could do well. Jadea Collin, I think, came to the youth program a little later. She came in the qualifying round, and I mean, we saw it in the U20's recent championship at Concacaf. Truly did a very good job in terms of how well she, one of the interesting stats of the finals against Mexico, she had the most touches, some of the most touches in the game, and she only played basically in the first half. That is amazing. I wonder what Collin does. There's always a conversation with young players as to what they should do with their career, whether finish collegiately, maybe do 3 years versus the 2, maybe look at an Olivia Smith, who we'll mention later, and just bet on yourself and go. Not everyone has those opportunities, but not everyone also has that ambition. But that backline could be very fascinating and interesting to take a look at.
To me, Jeanette Okiki, Ibo Ching in the back, honestly, I can't send enough appreciation posts for them, but they were rocks back there. They clearly ran out of gas at the end of the Mexico game, but it felt like they played every minute of every game, and they were solid. They had the energy. When I talk about being first to balls, cutting off, especially in that US game, They were cutting off angles. They were stepping in front of crosses. They were being physical when they needed to. It goes unnoticed because, again, the goals are the goal scorers and they get those. Another name, honorable mention, Jadea Collin, I think, ran until she couldn't run. I think she was out of gas by the end of the first half against Mexico, but
she had so many touches in the first half. She had like a top 3 touches in the whole game, even though she played less than half of it.
Exactly. She was involved as she needed to be.
When it gets to the middle, we have Geneva Hernandez-Gray, Sienna Gibson, and Olivia Smith. Now, Sienna Gibson, I think, is a very important thing to the Canadian program, and that is collegiate players, right? The youth sports are there. I think sometimes we find that within any system of growth within teams, there's always that condensed funnel. And we saw this on the women's side, where basically if you weren't in a acceleration program, if you weren't in a Rex, you basically didn't exist. That's where we had the likes of an Evelyn Vienne, the likes of a Chloe Lacasse, right? Those players who were playing well, even a Marie-Yasmine Alidou-Mimi, a player who didn't exist because they didn't go through those youth systems. Now, as a league such as the Northern Super League grows, those opportunities have to grow as well. And I know sometimes we start to look at the teams and we'll say, well, they actually aren't. But when you look a little deeper, it's like, oh, these 4 players are coming from universities in the States, but they all came from Excel programs or development centers. I think for Canada to really succeed, we have to continue, and that's something I'll continue to say at Champion. We need to expand how we recruit. We can't just funnel everything into these specific programs because not everyone has access to those programs. It really reinforces how some of our systems are set up, really do enforce the pay-to-play system that, a lot of people complain about. I being one of them, because ultimately we're trying to get our best players the opportunities. And sometimes that's all they need, opportunities. But if everything is already funneled in, then are you truly getting the best version of yourself? I'll wait to see. But what Sienna Gibson represents is players who play collegiately in Canada, who've actually been able to do so well. And her being a great contributor in that tournament, in those semifinal and final games, I think really should open the door for more of those players to take a look at. Geneva Hernandez-Gray, I think, a fascinating player to me. Moving to the same sporting club that Olivia Smith was in. And it was very interesting watching some of the advertising going for it. It was like, Sporting was just like, hey, you remember Olivia Smith? Well, here's Geneva Hernandez-Gray. And I was like, let's not put that type of expectations on the player. There are 2 different types of player. Hernandez-Gray, to me, is more of a 6 who can push into those 8 spaces, while Olivia Smith is a 10 who really is just looking to score. And that doesn't mean that's what they are, but that's where they were at that position. And I think within those 2 players, they're 2 different animals. So I think setting expectations for what they were are going to be different. And I think that is an important thing to do, especially when we're looking at the potential of the players coming through. Right, Olivia Smith in the 10 role, I think, speaks for herself. I think right now she's the poster child for the women's program. And in many ways, I think she is also the face of the women's program. Yes, you have the likes of Vanessa Gilles. Yes, you have the likes of Jessie Fleming, Janine Sonis. But I would argue right now she's the face of Canada soccer. And so why not build around it? Once we get to the front 3, this is where I get into dream country, right? On the right, you have Kaylee Hunter. Perfect example of what you want the Northern Super League to do, especially for young players, right? Give them a showcase opportunity and then see what they do next. I've already started seeing, shout out to W Soccer. Are we talking about, Kaylee going to Chelsea, going to, Europe? I think she will head to Europe. I think, quite frankly, the top 4 will head to Europe, even though one already is there, right? The other winger is Rosa Malouf, and I don't want to give up on Rosa. Every player develops differently, but the talent that she flashed at the U17 level is something I'm always going to hold on to. I think it's still there. I just think she just needs another solid year. Maybe a different coach gets that out of her. I mean, she's in her 2nd year at Texas. I feel like Rose is going to be like a 3-year player in Texas, similar to I think that Annabelle Chukwu, who is R9 of the U21s, will be a 3-year player in college before going to another going professional. But Hunter 7 is the youngest of the 3, right? Smith is the oldest of those 4, and then Chukwu and Maloof both being there. I think those two, I mean, Annabelle Chukwu in some aspects maybe one of the most fearless players, and if you don't know her game, be very much familiar with it, because if you don't know her, she doesn't show much, but as those emotions come out, you feel it. Rosa Maloof, to me, still has the work rate. I'm going to try to pay a little bit more attention to her in Texas this year, see how she's faring. But shout out to OSU out in Ottawa, Annabelle Chukwu and Rosa Maloof. Shout out to those two. The Toronto Nitros, and then North Nitros for Olivia Smith, and then Kelly Hunter with the Vancouver Whitecaps elite program. Now Vancouver Rise. But I think this 11, if you want to talk about team of the future, and some of you may look and say, this is basically the U20 team from the past. It is. Kelly Hunter didn't play at the U20s, but will be playing more than likely at the U17s this year. Right? So we'll get an opportunity to see her really show her ability, and then she'll have another cycle to play with the U20s next year. But look at that, right? Chukwu, Maloof, Hunter up top, Smith in your cam position, Gibson and Hernandez Gray as your holdings, Colin, Okiki, Oching, and Oti as your backline, and Noel Hennig. I think that is a fascinatingly exciting 11 of U21s. But that's just my list, guys. You tell me who would be on your U21 team of the future for the Canadian men's national team. Who have I missed? What players are you excited for? Who are you looking out for? Who do you think should be here? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, I'm gonna stop talking right here.